I have an 11-year-old son, Bailey, who has juvenile idiopathic arthritis, also known as JIA for short. He was diagnosed as a baby, so basically for his entire life he's had it, and for his entire life, me being a first-time mum and all, have been thrown into the role of not just a mother but a carer as well. Juvenile arthritis is a debilitating autoimmune disease that, if not managed medically and with other monitoring, can cause chronic constant pain and can cause permanent disability, and it also leads to other conditions as well. Being the parent carer of a child with pain is both exhausting and rewarding, because you get to take the ups with the downs. You get to appreciate every time they achieve a success that's an ordinary childhood milestone that may be taken for granted by other parents. You get to celebrate their achievement, but it's heart-wrenching in that you see your child suffer and you know that this time mummy's kisses aren't enough to take away the boo-boo. So you have to find out the way to medically manage a condition that makes sure that even though your child's been given a diagnosis that means they're not going to have a normal childhood, which is every child's right, you try to make sure that the pain is as little as possible so that the childhood is as normal as can be. Any parent or carer who's given someone into their care with a diagnosis that was previously unexpected or unpredictable, you go through a roller coaster of emotions. You suffer guilt, you suffer grief, you suffer despair and anger, and you suffer also determination that this is my child and I'm going to fight for them. I'm going to make sure that I will do whatever it takes to ease their pain, take away the burden that's been put on them that they don't deserve at this age, and to make sure that they can live as healthily and as happily as possible. So it's a real roller coaster of emotions. You've got this overwhelming love that basically is the buffer for everything else. Obviously, the biggest derailment to our situation would be a flare-up of my son's juvenile arthritis. If he can't walk, use his hands, feed himself, then obviously I have to step in and do all of those things. And he's an 11-year-old boy. He's starting to get to a stage where he doesn't want mummy to be washing him, drying him, and doing up his buttons. He wants that independence. So not only does it slow the process down in, say, getting ready for a normal school day, but it also slows down his own personal development and sense of independence. Other times can derail it where my pain levels and stress levels get too high and I feel that I'm struggling, and obviously my tolerance and patience can go the way as anyone else's, and I find it hard to cope. And another thing that's thrown into the matter that you may not consider with normal children, again, hate to use that label, but that's what it is common childhood illnesses like chickenpox can really throw a spanner in the works. For someone with an autoimmune disease and living with chronic pain and having the medications to treat it, it can actually have fatal consequences. So we go on full alert and we have to look at isolating, quarantining if there's someone with the condition, as my stepson had a few years ago. Poor little fella had to ride out the disease in his room. We had to get government permission to vaccinate our daughter, who was underage, for the chickenpox varicella vaccine, just to make sure she was also protected. So it really can throw something as simple as a childhood illness that can come home from school on any given day, can throw a real spanner in the works when you're caring someone with a chronic condition. Well, like my son, my daughter has lived with this condition in the family for her entire life. He was diagnosed before she was even born. There are times where she feels that she doesn't get the same time and attention as her brother does with the medical management of his chronic pain and inflammation. And she's right, because there's just not enough hours in the day sometimes. So we have to take extra care to make sure we give her those mummy moments, that we do something special that's focused on her and that's not medically related at all, because she's been dragged to appointment after appointment for years. But I think on the other hand, and again, I'm always trying to find a positive in amongst what can be seen as major negatives, I think it helps you appreciate the family time even more, because if you're not spending the time sitting in a hospital or doing some kind of therapy or at the pharmacy filling yet another prescription, you're actually enjoying just being with the family. Again, it's celebrating the successes and looking at the little things and not taking things for granted so much, because sometimes just getting out of the house as a family together when no one's actually hurting or sick, that's a pretty big thing, and we enjoy it. They say it takes a lot of money to raise a child, but when you're raising a child with a chronic condition or constant pain, the costs blow out exponentially at times. He's on injections twice a week. He's on other pain medication. He then has to have the monitoring of those medications to make sure it's not affecting his body. So he has to have regular blood tests. He has regular therapy, which includes hydrotherapy, hippotherapy, which is fantastic for kids with pain, which is horse riding, because it cushions their joints and takes the pain away from them. And the connection they have with the animal is brilliant as well. But then you also have to get them there, and you have to pay for these things. So that means, one, I can't work full time because someone has to take our son to his appointments. And secondly, my husband, who works as much as he can, again, there's only so many hours in a day and so many jobs he can do. And, well, it's a strain financially, shall I say, to try to keep a roof over our head at times. Some days, to be honest, I don't know that I really am, but I put on the brave face, I get on with it, I get over it, and I just keep pushing through, not only for my son's sake, but for the whole family and for everyone around us, because I also run a support group for other families with juvenile arthritis, so I feel I offer support for them as well. So I have to hold it together so that basically sometimes I feel it doesn't, or it won't fall apart. Recently, my GP sent me for tests to check the cortisol levels in my bloodstream, because he's thinking that the long-term chronic stress that I am obviously under due to the whole plethora of our situation, he thinks that it's starting to have a real physical impact aside from the pain of my foot and my leg, but he thinks it's actually starting to take an impact physiologically on my body as well, so that's something we have to monitor. Like most mothers, I put my children's needs first. When you have someone that you're caring for with a chronic condition who's in pain, you obviously want to take their pain levels down, and sometimes that's at the expense of your own. I've most recently, in the last 2 to 3 years, found it more physically taxing because I have my own disability now after an unfortunate surgical mishap, let's say, where I ended up in a wheelchair myself with a paralysed leg. So most days I live, well, I would say every day I live with constant pain, and the pain levels can vary. If I have to drive for, say, 3 hours to take my son to horse riding at Riding for the Disabled, which is part of his therapy, or if I have to drive him down to Westmead Children's Hospital and walk around that great big campus for a day, I find often by that night neither my son nor I can actually walk. But you just do it. You push through. I look at my little boy and I say, look at him. He puts on his brave face and he never complains. He never uses his arthritis as an excuse. And me as a grown adult, I should be able to do the same thing, even if sometimes I could probably take better care of myself so that I'm around to make sure that everyone else is looked after too. The most important is to try to keep the stress levels down and the confidence and sense of humour up. I find that humour is my biggest survival tool. If I can find something to laugh about every day, sometimes through the tears, then I know I can do this. I can get through it. I have to learn to self-care, which I'm not very good at, and I have to make sure that holistically the whole family is being looked after, not just all the medical information that we get bombarded with when you're caring for someone with chronic pain and illness, but we have to look after psychologically, emotionally, as well as all the other aspects of family life as well.